Morning. Say good morning, crowd.
Good morning.
We're going to convene the June meeting of the Beach Inlet Sound Advisory Committee, and we want to welcome everyone in the audience and anybody that would like to participate. When we have audience participation, feel free to do so. We have everybody in attendance except for Mike Benson, and Mike called me last night, and he's sick, and he didn't think he was going to be here, and I said, well, if you're sick, don't be here. So, and that way I had room for Tim.
That's really leadership, Larry. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I got here really early to think about all this, you know. Anyway, we want to welcome everyone here today, and welcome Chris. Thank you. Glad to have you with us. First thing we're going to do is I'd ask somebody, do we have an approval on the agenda? The March 18th agenda. Everybody remember that far back?
I make a motion to approve the March 18th agenda.
Is there a second?
No second.
Second. Motion, pardon?
You mean the minutes?
You mean the minutes?
Oh, yes, what
Minutes.
I say, agenda?
Yeah. I thought you got here early to prepare.
I didn't say I
You
got
need to
my
get
brain
earlier
straight. I
You need
just
to get
said I got
here
here
earlier
early.
next time.
I interrupted him.
If anybody that wears a shirt like this, you know what you can depend on, right? Okay, of the minutes, March 18th minutes.
That's what Terry meant.
So we had a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll have approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion of second?
One second.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion is carried. You know, the problem is we skip so many meetings, we don't get here often enough, so I can't remember. I have to be retrained every time we come. And in fact, I had to get GPS to find out how to get here. Okay.
He'll be here all week.
Yeah, that's
No, we won't.
I tell you, I feel like Rodney Dangerfield sitting up here. No respect. Do we have any comments from the public? Public's open now for comments. Sir, would you like to say anything? Yes, sir. Come up there and make sure it's on, and we need you to give your name and address, please.
Gene Graziosi, I'm at 2392 New River. And first of all, thank you for all the time and effort that you guys have put in. You know, I've been here for a while, and I remember when this room would be full, and half of the people would be on one side and half of the people would be on the other side. And so the fact that we don't have many people here probably represents that you guys are doing a really good job. And
I like the way you think.
yeah, it seems like the town has been put together really well. Got honestly, some very minor things that I think you guys may have already discussed. I really had not heard it. That disposal area that we're going to be using is a great find. My question on that is, will that in the future, once we do that, will that change the way the Corps does their ongoing navigational type, every 2 years they would be, are they going to stop putting it on the beach and then use the old disposal area instead, is I guess my question, and I don't know.
I think he'll address that during his presentation.
I think if you'll sit for the whole thing, Mr. Gibson.
And I know that this is not
Mr. Gibson will address that.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I'd like. And then the other thing is basically, you know, I think at the end of the day, we're trying to get this to be an engineered beach.
Correct.
And as an engineered beach, obviously, as Chris has guided us, it has to be maintained over the next several years. And what I don't really, I've never heard is that, you know, we're focused on getting this done and getting this done the right way. I've really not heard a lot, and maybe it's not the time to hear about it, of what the ongoing maintenance plan is going to
And,
be.
and yes, sir, and what this has been a 5-year action plan, but a 30-year maintenance plan. So what our whole plan, it goes out for 30 years.
Right.
But right now, we've got to get the work done, and Chris is going to address some of this, and he can answer your questions a lot better than I can.
My biggest, I guess, question is, for the ongoing maintenance plan, which I know has to be done, is where the sand is coming from that. That's probably, and those were really the two things that
And that's-
I had not heard about, so that's really what
Well,
I'm,
that's a really good question. I mean,
Okay.
I'm sure that a lot of people would like to know the same thing.
Okay.
But they haven't thought that far in advance. Right now, it's worrying about today, and tomorrow will come. But we do have a plan for the whole process.
right, right. Thank
So-
you.
So real quick, I'll throw something out there. Jamie Pratt is here with me. He's our Executive Vice President. He's kind of the workhorse on what we're doing permitting wise. Jamie's going to go through kind of where we are with the one step, et cetera. But the questions that he's got about the long-term thing, those are all things that we have been kicking around, and there are things that have to fall into place in order for one plan or another to happen. And I'll discuss that after Jamie goes
Okay.
through the one
So
step. stuff.
the bottom line is, we don't have an in-place set plan, but we've got ideas of how the planning process should be.
Yeah, the whole terminal groin thing has such a big impact
Yeah.
on how all of that, what can be done legally through, because of the issues at the north end, what can be done from an engineering perspective, et cetera. All of those have to kind of play together. And until some of that gets resolved, it's up in the air. But
But
I'll
you-
talk about
but
it.
Sir,
It's fluid.
you ask a question that's very good and very pertinent to today's meeting. So I think you're going to feel a lot better when you leave today. And, all right, is there any other comments to be made? All right, then I'm going to turn it over to Manager Darian for a current status of the shoreline protection projects.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
As you're aware, beach projects paused for the season. We paused operations on May 2nd. We started the PTC, which was Potential Tropical Cyclone Number 8 project, which is a FEMA project. Dunes, rebuilding the dunes, not so much the active beach, but a dune project. We started on this past season, but then paused. We intend to, once turtle season is over, pick back up where we left off and complete that project. This project, I continue to work with FEMA to go through the process. They've been sending several requests for informations back to us, which we've been responding to. We've just responded to the last series of questions early this month. So it's still at the CRC level with FEMA, but it's continuing to go through that process, and we respond to the questions as they come in as we go through that process. But funds still have not been obligated by FEMA for that project, but the board did approve, as you're aware, to move forward with the project. Anyway, we moved funds around so that that could happen during this season to get the critical work that was done that was necessary for hurricane season. So we'll pick back up on that after turtle season. We've also been involved with the board approved the cost share project once again for beach plantings, which was sea oats, and this year we added bitter panicum to the choices for residents. It was a 50-50 split cost share program that we did. That program ran through May, through this month. June 13th was the last date for that project. I don't have the final closeout details on that project yet with how many plants were installed, but the last time I reported earlier this month, we were just under 20,000 plants. The Topsail Island Vitex eradication project, that's also a project that's ongoing that I've been working on with the other towns of Topsail Beach and Surf City Beach. We've got a state grant from the DEQ to treat beach vitex, so that's ongoing. We went through the RFP process, selected a contractor, and we have an agreement that's pending with the contractor at this point. Each town, their attorneys will be reviewing that And once approval has been given, we'll get that scheduled and probably to start later this month.
Before you leave that, would you let people, there's been things posted about why we're doing that and that the reason it's island-wide in terms of, and why we're doing it that way, just so we have it in the record?
Right, the three towns decided it would be best to take an approach of working together to eradicate Vitex, because Vitex, of course, is not going to stop at the Topsail Beach line or the Surf City line. It's an island-wide problem, so we wanted to address it as an island-wide initiative. All three towns do have an ordinance now in place that prohibits beach Vitex. So by doing this grant, it was a way we did a dashboard survey to get some of the properties identified, to start the process. I foresee this as being probably a project that will continue on for probably 3 or 4 years. But the grant that we got, you know, we're trying to move forward with as many properties as possible. But again, I foresee this is lasting probably 3 or 4 years.
It seems that some people were confused. I saw that Kip posted some of the stuff we had on there, that basically it's very invasive. It doesn't have the root structure to hold the dunes. Okay, and that people were looking at it thinking it looked nice and it was doing the stuff in the dunes, and that's not the case at all because of the root structure, right? And it keeps the other beach grasses and stuff, it gets rid of them. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I think Chris has probably some input on
So
that as well.
the root system in beach Vitex is a surface root system, so it doesn't go down into the sand to form that structure that you would like in the dune, like sea oats do. And unfortunately, Vitex emits a pheromone that kills. It has a wonderful internal grass and weed killer that it actually ejects and kills everything that's in within a several foot radius of it, so that it can completely take over an area.
Wow.
So it's a mean little plant. It's the kudzu of the coast.
Yeah, and while the board passed an ordinance prohibiting beach Vitex, this grant is allowing us to, you know, to eradicate it with some state funds that have become available. So as long as, you know, property owners sign off on the waivers that have been sent to them, you can sign off. There's a form online that you can sign off on. I've also have mailed a letter out to each resident that we did an assessment on to get those back. So, and I've even been taking other ones, accepting other forms as people have been calling and asking about the program, so that if we don't get waivers from one property, we can jump to another property and get that included with the grant funding.
Approximately how many properties did we determine that we've got that's got it on it?
40.
40?
Some of them are very thick as well. And one thing to watch out, if you are trying to take Vitex off of your property, understand that there's like each joint in the root system and in the stems, each joint can regrow another plant. So if you go and you try to pull it up and you're breaking it up, then those pieces that fall out of the truck or whatever get spread everywhere along its path, wherever it's taken to be burned off or destroyed or whatever. And again, one of the reasons for the island-wide situation is where we have these plants and there's dune erosion. When those dunes erode and those beach Vitex plants fall into the water and break up, then that scatters all sorts of new growth up and down the island. So it is a very aggressive plant, and the poisoning and burning are about the only way to get rid of it.
Just to add to that a little bit too, the reason it's a 3 to 4 year.
Get up to,
The reason it's a 3 to 4 year process is to get rid of it is a very labor intensive process where you have to scrape some of the bark back, paint the poison onto it, and make sure you go all the way around, and that will kill off part of the plant in one season. In the following season, you have to come back and treat again, and it takes multiple iterations of treatments over years to get rid of the plant entirely. So it's not like a one and done where you go out and spray a dandelion and with Roundup and it goes away. It's an extremely resilient plant that takes a lot of effort to carefully scrape the bark back, apply the toxin to it, and it'll slowly kill it off. But as Chris said, you want to make sure you get rid of the entire root structure, otherwise it's just going to come back in different areas.
Some mean stuff.
Alice, question for you. If a homeowner did not get a letter asking for permission to do this on their property, can they assume then they don't have the Vitex?
No, the dashboard assessment that was done by the contractor when we were trying to put the grant together was just that, a quick dashboard assessment. So there's certainly more properties out there, and that's why, you know, we've been trying to take every opportunity we can to announce the project so more people can reach out to me to let me know that they do have ITEX, and then I can add them on that list and get a waiver signed from them so that when we're in a position to go and treat, we can do that.
So would it be beneficial for homeowners just to sign the waiver because they
Yes.
may not know, just in case?
That's a good point.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Good point.
Yeah, on that dashboard survey that was done, it was a drive the beach kind of scenario. So if it was on the front of the dune or top of the dune, it was visible. But if there were patches that were in the yard or on the back of the dune, where they would not be visible from driver's seat on the beach, then they weren't noted. And I know that we've gone back and done some more extensive research in Topsail, and there was about 30% more properties than we thought there were from the dashboard. So there is definitely more than we thought there was originally.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
So is it manager?
That concludes my report.
Thank you. Make sure that if you say anything that you cut your speakers on, because for record-taking purposes and for minutes. So they make sure we can hear them. Thank you. All right, anything else before we turn it over to Chris?
The real story.
All right, I'm gonna call on Chris Gibson of TI Coastal, and he can do this dog and pony show.
Oh, well, I'm gonna actually have Jamie, since, like I said, he is our actual internal lead on this permitting. I'm gonna have him go up and give the presentation for what we've done as far as the one step. And then, after that, I'll talk back some more about the long-term
He
planning.
probably knows more what's going on anyway.
He is definitely more in tune with the details, and is the day-to-day operation
I
timing
understand.
and schedule.
Without pulling it off the wall, can we get that turned a little bit?
We're talking.
Oh, it's a talk, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I didn't prepare any kind of documentation, just gonna kind of go through where we are. But I appreciate you guys having me and letting me talk for Chris and trying to fill in his shoes a little bit here.
And tell us your name again for that.
I'm Jamie Pratt with TI Coastal. Yep. So we had a very successful one-stop meeting with the agencies. For those of you that don't know, before you submit a permit application, the agencies want to hold a meeting where basically all of the seats come together and discuss the project beforehand. This includes all, Wildlife Resource Commission, Fisheries, Water Quality, DEQ, Corps of Engineers, National Wildlife Resource Commission, National Fisheries from NOAA. Everybody kind of comes together after reviewing our proposal, the plans, a written narrative, the geotech information, and we get together and kind of discuss the project. That way, if there are any issues that they foresee with the permitting process, we can kind of discuss those and work out those problems before you submit your formal application. The point is to make sure that they can adhere to their 90-day review period, 120-day review period of the permit application, and not have that drag on for years as you work through a major project, a major permit application. As you go into these meetings, you always anticipate they're going to say no. What you look out for is the heck no's and the are you kidding me no's. So you go into the meetings expect that they're going to kind of push back on everything. And if you can limit the pushback to just a no, then you're doing really well. And for most part, we had just a no. There was not too much of a are you kidding me with this. As you know, the project entails taking material from DA 143 and putting it onto the beach, basically from where the northern bridge comes across all the way to the north end of the island, rebuilding a primary dune system, a berm with a natural beach slope, and then as well as looking at a temporary sand retention structure at the very northern end to hold that sand in place until the terminal growing is permitted. The temporary structure was are you kidding me, with this kind of pushback. So that was a resounding from every single one of the agencies. That's not likely, all the way down to actual DEQ permit coordinators stating that there's actually a law that says no temporary structure shall be allowed in North Carolina. That's basically considered a terminal groin, and you'd have to go through the terminal groin permitting process. So that one is not looking like something that would be an easy permit or get done in a timely manner. You know, we can push on it and see what we could get done in a couple of years, but I think for the time frame of this project, that's probably going to be a big ask. Everything else looks pretty good. There were some small concerns over material quality, especially as we got down deeper. You got into the more dark colored sands, which are a problem with wildlife resource commissions because of turtle nests. Darker sediment is hotter, and the temperature of the sand impacts the sex of the turtle. So I think it's males that are born with warmer temperatures, so you don't want a bunch of male turtles born with dark sediment. So that's the big concern there. There was a little bit of concern with shell material that was deeper as well, but we were going to screen some of that out as we pumped onto the beach. So I think that alleviated people's concerns with that. The only other major pushback we got was the very north end is very heavily vegetated, as you guys know, and I guess normally we deal with shorebird nesting habitat. Apparently that's a pretty good upland bird habitat for nesting and foraging. So there was a little bit of concern from North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission about taking away some of that forested habitat on the north side. Otherwise, everything was pretty smooth, and I think we have a pretty good path forward with the agencies for the project, with, you know, primarily looking at taking the structure out of the north end for right now. It did sound like with ATM's permitting of the terminal groin that the draft EIS statement was going to be done late this summer. So we could try, and I'm not exactly sure, you guys probably know more than I do about that, just talking with some of the agencies, that sounded like the time frame for the draft EIS of the terminal groin. So looking at the time frame of that versus our project, there might be, it's a long shot, but there could be some coordination with that where you can do both of those in conjunction and might alleviate the concern of not having the structure of the north end to hold sand. From here, what we are going to do is basically look at the agency's comments and develop the final plan for the project, looking at the exact volume that we can take from the island itself, minimizing the amount of dark sediment that we will place onto the beach. I think we're looking at, originally we proposed going to -14, which would allow a dredge to cut directly into the island, but it would be basically 14 feet of dark sediment that would be placed, and you know, it would lighten up in the sun, as we all know. Like, the sediment is dark because it is in an anaerobic environment, so there's not oxygen there. It's been underwater and without oxygen for a long time, so it's dark. But as soon as you expose that to sunlight and oxygen, it lightens up. It doesn't become the golden sand that we see on the top of the island right away. It becomes a lighter gray, more of a white material, but it does not stay dark gray for very long. To alleviate some of the concerns, I think we're going to look at shallowing up the dredge cut probably to, instead of -14, to -6 or so, which would allow us to still keep the dredge floating and dig into the island, but kind of meet in the middle a little bit with the agencies to help with the permitting process. And it would still provide you with plenty of sand to do your project, build the dune, build the berm. The berm may move in 2 or 3 feet to accommodate for that slight difference in sand material, but I think overall it would still be a very, very successful project and get done what we need to get done. Another thing we need to address is the placement of sand at the north end. Now that the guarantee of having a structure to maintain that sand in that position is kind of off the table. We need to look at how we place sand in that area and really evaluate what the plan will be going forward with that. So that's going to be something that Chris and I focus on over the next couple of weeks to really iron out the details of what that placement at the north end will look like, to either allow for higher erosion rates. That is the highest erosion rate on the island because of the inlet influence area. So we need to look at the timing of when the terminal groin would likely go to construction and either really overfill that section of the beach so that there is enough sand that it can erode and not be in a bad position, or look at other options of what we may be able to do to kind of help that section out. So that's the number one priority right now, is to kind of iron out that detail of the project. Another thing with Wildlife Resource Commission, there is, and this is a big question mark right now, but something to look at, is the creation, and it kind of helps with what your concern was with what the Corps will use this island for in the future. If we recreate capacity in this island, there is a good chance that the cheapest place for the Corps to place sand would be back into the island itself and not come to the beach. They're supposed to beneficially use the sand, but when it comes down to dollars, it's way cheaper to place it into the island and just put the sand there. You're not dealing with all the construction on the beach side. It's a shorter pipeline length, so that makes more sense financially for the town to do. Wildlife Resource Commission was looking for mitigation options. They threw that out there. That's a word they throw out a lot, is, okay, so you're destroying this upland bird habitat. What are you going to do to mitigate those losses? And something that we need to look at, or we would like to look at, it has to make financial sense for the town, obviously first, but look at the end of the project, creating a bird sanctuary on the island itself. So looking at doing a habitat restoration where it's a mix of upland, some upland hummocky, nesting habitat, maybe a marsh area with some creeks running through it that would become a fish bird sanctuary and kind of an environmental remediation site at where the island is. That would take it as a disposal site for the Corps off and force them to place sand onto the beach anytime they had a project, because they wouldn't have the disposal site to place the sand into that would be a cheap option for them. Big caveat to that is we have to look at financial sources, obviously, to make that happen. If you restore the site, you have a shallow draft fund that can help out with the construction project. If you're not restoring dredge disposal site capacity, then that funding source goes away. So we're trying to coordinate meetings with Wildlife Resource Commission to, one, see what kind of features they would like to see in an environmental island, but then also what state grants or funding mechanisms there would be from Audubon or from fisheries or from Land Conservancy that may help with this project to restore this as a natural habitat. Again, very preliminary, just an idea to kind of help and make this, look out for the town long term, making sure that the sand dredge from the crossings goes to the beach rather than into the island, and then also kind of a good measure of an environmental stewardship project as well. That would be kind of cool. So that's another avenue that we're going to pursue in the next couple of weeks. We've got phone calls in with Wildlife Resource Commission to try to establish a meeting and chat with them about design, but then more importantly, financial reasons. And that will kind of dictate the path we go forward there. Worst case scenario, we restore the island as a disposal site, and then shallow draft fund helps pay for the project because you're restoring capacity in the site. And we try to work with the Corps very closely to make sure that they adhere to their beneficial use policy for beach quality material from the crossing. So this summer we are working through those first two options of finalizing the beach placement, re-looking at the geotechnical information, going down to -6 in the island rather than -14, and finalizing that documentation, and should have the final permit application ready to go and be approved by CAMA by September of this year. So looking at hopefully having the permit in, you can submit it, but the big thing is having them approve it as complete. So get it submitted probably, hopefully by late August, and then sometime in September, fill in whatever missing pieces they need to check their boxes and finish that permit application out. Another thing actually we need to work on this summer is the pipeline crossing that we're looking at is coming down the waterway and then coming across by La Costa Avenue and running underneath of the bridge that's right there, the low swale that was created by the 90s hurricanes, running the pipeline underneath of that. We need to work out some of the what are they called, easements with the underlying property owners there to make sure that it would be acceptable to place the pipeline in that area. It's very low impact. You're just laying the pipe across the land, but obviously you'd have a pipe through your yard for 6 or 7 months while we did the project. Not 6 or 7 months, but probably 4 or 5 months while we did the project.
Jump in real quick. The area we're looking at, it wouldn't be going through anybody's yard. It's like a house.
True.
But there's some undeveloped properties there that do have property owners that we need to negotiate with.
Thanks. Yeah, it's vacant land. It's an open area. It's all the way from the waterway and then underneath the bridge at the road and then up and over top of the dune to the beach side. And it kind of comes out halfway through the project, so you would be an easy turn left and right to pump to the north and the south. So it's perfect landing area. It's vacant, but we need to work with the underlying property owners to make sure it's acceptable. So those are the small details we have to work out before the major permit is turned in. Once it's turned in, within a couple of months, you should have a good feel that it's moving forward at a proper pace. Usually it takes 5 or 6 months for them to review. They have to send it all out to all of the different agencies. Everybody gets a chance to comment, and then it comes back and is approved usually within 6 months. So about 3 to 4 months after it's turned in, late November, early December, looking at putting the project out to bid. So that would be by the end of 2025, looking to hopefully go out to bid as long as everything is favorable with the permitting agencies. It is a little bit tricky sometimes to put a project out to bid without having the permits in hand, because it is a risk for the contractor to lock in on a project without having permits. But we're hoping that during the bid process, because it is a logistically complicated project, we would do a 60-day bid window probably, so people have a chance to review all of the documentation, the specifications, the plans, ask questions. So looking at awarding bid probably sometime, hopefully in March, late February, early March, and a notice to proceed pretty much immediately, because we want to get through clearing and grubbing of the island before we get full on into bird nesting season. So that would be the plan. Clear and grub over the summer of next year, or early spring through late spring next year, and then have equipment mobilization over the summer of 2026 and be ready to go to construction November 16th, 2026. That's the first date you can start putting trucks and bulldozers and everything onto the beach, according to turtle moratoriums. So that's kind of the iteration of where we are, what we look like going forward, and happy to answer any questions you guys have with the process.
I do. If someone else wants to go first. Right. So would you? And again, I'm just slow on this. So the disposal island is the one we would turn into the sanctuary.
Correct.
So are
Potentially.
you putting as much sand back into it as you took out, or?
No,
it's
right
not-
now the top.
It's not like I'm taking out 5 and putting in 5 and taking out 5 and just smooshing it out, basically?
No, so the top elevation of the island right now is about plus 40, so it's all upland. It looks like a sand dune on top of it. There's some cedar trees, there's some seagrass that grows up. We would take it from elevation 40 at the top down to elevation 0 or -6 in the middle. So you're taking away 45 feet of material vertically, and all of that sand would go onto the beach. At the end, the final elevation, which was, as you construct it, basically you need to keep a exterior dike around the outside. The top of that dike would be about elevation 12 or so, with 3-on-1 slopes. So think of like a sand dune that goes all the way around the outside of the island, and that holds water inside of the site so that the dredge can continue to float and dig its way in.
Yeah.
So you need the dredge to be able to float and pull itself like it normally would in a channel inside the island. When you're done, the water kind of comes back out of the island after the dredge is floated out, and you let the water seep out, and you're left with a sand dune around the outside that's at elevation 12. That's about 180 to 230,000 cubic yards of sand that you would then rework into the final environmental site, where you would have some upland areas at about elevation 5. So using the sand that is left as the dike that was necessary to keep the water in the island, rework that into like a sandy area, but then also maybe excavate some natural channels to go in, and then plant Spartina in there as well.
To this gentleman's question though, if, once that becomes a bird habitat, so, I mean, one of the concerns I thought he mentioned, which is a good one, is now when they dredge, they throw it up on the beach.
Mm-hmm.
If we turn that into a habitat, they can't use it
The site
anymore.
would not be
So
a
they
disposal
still would
site.
have to throw it. To his point,
Correct.
we're not, because I think you had a great point, which is if you dig it all out, do they just put it in there and then they don't put the sand on the beach? And the answer is, if you do that project, they can't use it anymore.
Right.
So the sand would come back on
Right.
the beach. All right, and then the second one, I'm sure we're gonna hear from phase one people. What, in terms of, and I don't know what's gonna happen with the terminal groin. I don't know what the cost is. I don't know if they're gonna come out and even approve it or whatever. So you're still gonna try to mitigate what's up in the north end, correct? Whether it's put more sand down or do something else, right? We're
Yeah.
not going to and I guess the overall question is, we're looking at 1, 2, and 3 to get, get done. If we get the permits in, and I'm gonna use the bike path, which Alice will follow to her chair. If there's areas where we can't get permits, that doesn't mean we can't do the project with the areas that get, like, you were asking for the temporary structure. If we filed for that and they turn us down, that doesn't kill the project, that just would kill one piece of it.
Right, correct.
And so that's true, right, for
Yep.
the whole thing,
The
right?
beach fill template would stay the same. The only thing that would not be included would be this actual structure. So fill would still go for phases 1, 2, and 3. That design does not change at all.
Okay.
The only thing that
So
changes.
even if you didn't have the temporary structure or a structure there, if I looked at it the day that it's completed, okay, it will be a fully functioning beach. It's
Yes.
just a protection to keep it going in what's
Yes.
not there. So if I'm in 1, it's gonna look like the rest of 1, 2, and 3.
Correct. And that's what we're looking
So-
at, is maybe how if we can add extra sand, like we know the erosion rate there is, I'm gonna throw just a ballpark number, 10
Right.
feet per year. And we wanna get, 5 years out of it to make sure that we can get the structure in, then maybe we need to build the beach out by an extra 50 feet in that area to make sure that the erosion rate will be met, and at the end of that 5-year period, hopefully we would
So you're
still be-
contemplating the erosion rate. And then just one final question on that. Let's assume that everything, he's gonna answer the money questions. I'm sure somebody's gonna ask him is where the money's coming from. But if we are, 1, 2, and 3 become an engineered beach, and let's just say that 1 has more erosion, but we're able to do stuff, it'll still be treated as an engineered beach, right? So we'll still get the FEMA coverage.
Yes.
As if, because that to me is very important. And you don't want to throw money at something and then find out that they're not going to help us rebuild it. But once we build it, then FEMA will treat it the same way.
Yeah,
No questions from 1? I figured you guys were going to be all over this.
Can I interject a couple of things here real quick? We're going at this with the Marines attitude, which is no man left behind. We're not going to write off any portion, any homes. We're looking at this to protect everybody. At the north end, not only are we looking at just quantity for erosion rates, but is there something that we can do with the shape of it? So that, because you've got that flood channel that runs right along the beach that's deep and quick. Is there a tongue if we put a tongue out there and close that channel off temporarily, does that get us something else? We kind of look at
Any
that.
advantage is what you're saying.
Any advantages we can do with a soft solution, we're going to look at and try to feel that out, and then hopefully with the terminal groin, we were kind of surprised when they told us that the draft EIS was coming in August. I didn't realize it
You
was.
did ask what year, August though, right? Because we
Yeah, they said 25.
they said
Right,
this
it's
year.
like they said it's going to be September. We have to be very specific with those.
So I guess that would be my question. The terminal groin is still in play.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah,
But
Absolutely.
But honestly, and he'll tell you, it was in the beginning though. The temporary structure wasn't gonna stop the EIS thing anyway. We were going forward with it regardless.
Yeah.
Because you gotta look at what the best option is.
So what does it mean that the EIS is gonna drop, what, this summer or whatever?
Well, it's a huge step that the draft EIS is out, because that means they've actually written the document, which has taken, what, 6 years?
It preceded Alice, I know.
Yeah, something on that order. So that's a big step forward. It means it can actually go into the review in the National Register. So clocks start, statutory clocks start going off when that's published. And so you're usually, once you get there, you're looking at about 18 months to a decision once you get the draft EIS out.
Would you, before you leave that, would you remind people, though, they're not looking at one option, they're looking at everything from doing nothing to a terminal groin and like 2 or 3 things in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a this or that, they could come up with a different solution that still does what we want it to do, but we don't know what they're gonna recommend, is that fair?
Yeah, the whole it's the separation of the applicant and the EIS process is often difficult for communities, because you're paying the bill, but at the same time, you're not supposed to put any influence into it or any bias into the analysis. And so that's hard, because it leaves you a little bit uninformed as you go along through this process. The communities don't often know exactly where it's at, and don't often know which directions they may be pointing. Obviously, the consultant that's brought in as a third-party preparer typically knows what the client is after, but they have to keep
Appear
it
neutral?
You have to be very neutral in it.
All right, mine's more, I have a broader question in the end. There's been talk of it, so should FEMA go away, one, for the beaches that are here already, do we know or have an idea where at the state level or at any other entities where grants or monies would be available for, potential repairs or ongoing projects? And if they do fall back to the state level that's been talked about, what agencies or how would their monies or availability of monies be affected if it's all pushed back down into the states? Has there been any internal discussion, state level, our level, county level?
Excellent question. So I was actually just reading a thing Chairman Snyder shared with me last night. He's on the chairman of the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Committee. And we've been talking about where FEMA, it's a document of where FEMA might go under what they're proposing. First, I want to say this. North Carolina is ahead of the game with others. FEMA really only covers 75% of damages. North Carolina covers the other 25%. That's not going anywhere. So there's at least a 25% thing that's already there from the state. The ideas that are being kicked around are more where FEMA is not an operational entity, but it only administers block grants directly from the cabinet level. So they would be issuing block grants to the state for the state to administer to the local municipalities, counties, etc. I think if it goes that way, it could be very beneficial to communities like North Topsail Beach. Right now, we run through this process. It started after Hurricane Matthew in 2016, where they got FEMA more involved. And what happened, so now if you have a permit to do a beach project, and you have a long-term permit to manage that project and to re-nourish it when it's damaged, if you apply for a FEMA grant post-storm, you have to go through the entire environmental permitting process again with FEMA. Projects that are funded by FEMA are supposed to be done in 18 months, and right now we're seeing 24 to 36 months before we even get FEMA approval for money because of getting caught up in their environmental side. And it's very limited staff. They're looking at cutting all of that out and saying, okay, these are the assessed damages. Here's a block grant to North Carolina Department of Public Safety, who runs, that's where the money really, the checks really come from in the end. Here you go, here's this amount of money, you distribute it. You figure out how to do it. You deal with the permitting. So to me, what they're looking at doing, it's not that the FEMA money's going away, it's that the bureaucracy's going away. And that will be a wonderful thing for the communities if it falls that way.
You want to talk about shallow draft? Explain to people what shallow draft fund is.
Okay,
We're talking
so,
about funding for the initial project.
so funding for the initial project, and this was what Jamie mentioned about the dollars. Under shallow draft a couple years ago, we got some language published that said if you were developing, either purchasing or developing a disposal site for dredge material, that qualified under shallow draft for matching funds. The shallow draft fund matches $3 for every dollar in the community. So basically, if the site is used as a disposal site, there's a 75% cost share with the state. Understand this is probably a $40 million project. So that's a hefty,
10 our way.
that's a hefty chunk. If you're doing just a beach project, then it's 50-50. So if we did an environmental restoration over there, then we lose from directly from the state about $10 million. But there are opportunities that you have folks like U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Coastal Land Trust, all of these other people that have huge grants that go out for environmental restoration. So there's a possibility to get that 10 million back or get it legislated directly through the state. There's some different opportunities there, and long term, that would ensure that 130,000 cubic yards every 2 years from the Corps goes to the island rather than goes into the disposal site. So you kind of got to put them all together and iron out what's the long-term cost, short-term cost, long-term benefits, and really focus on that of what we can do there. And again, it's something that kind of popped up. It's in the infancy. Legislation that passed at the federal level in January, was signed into law, allows for underlying property owners of disposal sites that are closed or are not being used or haven't been used in the last 20 years, for the underlying property owner to take the core easement off. So this site, it's an opportunity that North Carolina Wildlife Resources would probably love to not have this as a disposal site. They're the underlying property owner. So that could happen, and then we could work with them to figure out how to do this as economical for everybody. And does some, advantageous things environmentally, being good stewards. So it's something we got to kick around. It's an infancy idea that came out of the one-stop meeting. We got out of it and we went, hey, what if we did this? She's fussing about bird habitat. There's a possibility here to create this bird habitat and make sure that long-term sand keeps coming to the north end. Because once the terminal groin's in, that sand that comes out of the waterway will be enough to maintain that north end. And it will become a non-financial issue for the town. You won't be dealing with very much above, I get them wrong all the time, Moritz? Say Moritz? Is it the one? No. What's the one? What's the big one? Right down.
St. Regis.
St. Regis.
Yeah, St. Moritz is the one you already did.
Yeah. St. Regis. From the St. Regis up is the terminal going with pretty much with that and the waterway dredging. That would pretty much take care of everything in that area and be healthy. So got to look kind of at that long term. And that's what we'll do. Once we get through this, getting this project built, that's really our next focus is, where do we go long term for sand? How are we going to maintain this? The inlet is a viable source, but because of the lawsuits, et cetera, it's not a viable source until the terminal groin is in. because that's the way the lawsuit was written up. So, we have
You gotta remind them what the lawsuit is. Against the town. That's a town lawsuit that restricts what we can do up there. It's not like a federal lawsuit. It was by the homeowners.
Yeah,
It predates me, so.
it all has to do with, what's that? When they realigned the channel and the sandbags came in and all of that came into play, there was litigation over restoring the sandbags and who was going to pay and what was going to be done. And one of the stipulations was that the inlet channel would not be used as a sand source until a hardened structure was put in up there to protect those homes from the inlet sucking the sand off the hill. So right now that's a limbo site, but it is a site that would realistically manage probably 4 to 5 miles of the beach long term. And I'm babbling now, sorry.
Well, you never babbling.
Sounds like a lot of this is hinged on that terminal groin, though.
There are a lot of things financially, economically, sustainably that are hinged on the terminal groin because there is so much effort that is needed to protect that northern end financially and as sand resource in its current situation. It's just gotten it's a tough area. I mean, anytime you've got structures that close to an inlet, it's a tough situation. And so it's not a situation where you can really even the way everything is configured up there. It's not a situation where you could even write off those homes and just say it's not financially viable, because it's not a situation that's going to stop there. It's going to keep going. It's a
Mother Nature.
Mother Nature's going to keep coming south, and so you really need to draw the line somewhere on this thin an island.
But we're in my opinion, we're moving forward, and the more we move forward, the closer we're going to get to being able to get a terminal groin. I mean, that's if we were sitting down on the south end and we hadn't done anything to get up to the north end, we're going to have a lot less opportunity and chance to get that, in my opinion. So I think that the more that we do and the more that we spend, because we know that permitting can take place for a terminal groin because they've got examples where it has. Mm-hmm. So it's not the fact that nobody's got one. They do have them. So we've just and I think that the more that we do, and in the meantime, what's going to happen is that we're going to get phases 1, 2, and 3 fixed, and they're going to immediately start deteriorating again until such time as we can get that terminal groin in there. And in the process, we're just going to continue to have to do maintenance and maintenance and maintenance. But we will at least have gotten it up to the point to where at one point in time, we're going to have it to where it's an engineered beach. That gives us the opportunity for some money when certain things happen. Exactly. That we're not able to get now. So that helps. And then we're just going to have to keep plugging away at the. But based on what you were saying and you've said to me from the one stop, is that when they said, "Oh no, not going to happen," period. But the bottom line is, based on the conversation that Chris is having, to where some of the whole processes are changing, then we may have an opportunity to go back to it and get it permitted. But because we've got several years now, we got a couple of years at least, because we're talking about the earliest that we could begin construction being October or so of next year, 26. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Mm-hmm. And that would not be the groin.
No, that would not be the going.
And so just a moment of clarity on it. Understand, yes, there have been terminal groins permitted, but these things usually get caught up in litigation.
Yeah.
It's and not to use a terrible, it's the tree huggers that fight these things, and
yeah.
You're going to have people that don't want it. You're going to have, if you've looked at the Facebook comments on this, you got people that say it's going to destroy the town if we put a groin in. You got other people saying that kind of stuff. So I'm just saying, as a practical matter, one of the things we decided to do as a town in this committee is we are gonna proceed to get done what we can get done.
That's right.
All right, if we gotta protect one and spend money up there, knowing that it may take more time to get stuff done, but doing nothing is something.
right.
And then I think we've got, Alice, one more payment on the Phase 5 stuff, and then we're done with that. And now we have about 4 million coming into the beach
Yeah.
each year. So, you know, that's why we're putting the money away for those type of things, but
And I think that-
keep in mind, it's just the reality of this thing is, who knows what the Army Corps is gonna come out with, and who knows who's gonna, you know, you've been through these things too. It's not, I mean, as much as I would love to say we file it, we get that EIS statement, and everything's hunky-dory, my guess is there'll be people commenting pretty strongly. Is that fair?
As you look at the terminal groins, you have people that say it's going to destroy the beach. There's two really good examples that were built in the past couple of years here locally. One was at Bald Head Island, the
Yep.
other one's at Ocean Isle Beach. They
Which
are.
is beautiful for the people that didn't go down to Ocean Isle with us, that is something to say.
So if you look at the aerial photographs in Google Earth, I'm sure you guys are familiar with Google Earth. At the top, there's a timeline button that you can kind of slide and look at historic aerial photographs going back sometimes to the 50s. They're not very great, but I would encourage everybody to go and look at Google Earth and look at the timeline feature of Bald Head before and after they placed the groin there. They have a really nice low elevation groin, and it's done exactly what it needs to do, where it is holding sand on, I think it's called South Beach. That's the ocean facing beach, and it's holding sand there, and is completely eliminated the erosion problem for those houses that existed before, where they had geotubes for years and years and years, and they had the typical New Jersey groin effect where you have upland accretion, and on the other side is big erosion. The terminal groin did exactly what it was supposed to do, and is now there's 600 feet of dry beach in front of those houses. The most important thing about that design criteria at Bald Head is you can't see the top of the groin at all. Sand has completely covered over it, and it's bypassing it. So the fact that you can't see the top of the groin means it's doing what it's supposed to do, is holding sand there, but then also allowing sand to flow over top of it. It's supposed to be leaky, quote unquote leaky, so allow sand to get to the downdrift side and keep feeding that beach on the other side of it. So if you look at Bald Head, you'll see a tiny little bit of rock that's sticking out into the surf, but you can't see a difference in updrift or downdrift side of that groin. If you look at Ocean Isle, it's doing a fantastic job of trapping sand and protecting those beach, but the downdrift side, the inlet side of that is completely scouring back landward. That groin, in my opinion, is built a little bit too high because you can see the top of the rock, so sand is not being allowed to go over the top or around the ocean side of it, and it is preventing sand from reaching that inlet side of the groin itself. So,
Talk about the timing of those two, though. It wasn't like neither one of those. By the way, anybody that wants pictures, we went down there when they were building the Ocean Isle one, and the rocks that they were bringing out to build this thing. Were you involved in that? Yeah, I got some pictures of that stuff. That was unbelievable what they were moving. They had a really good contractor that needed the project too.
Yep.
Because was he like half the bid of everybody else or something? It was something crazy.
Yeah,
Difference.
the Ocean Isle one was
Yeah.
exceptionally
But
cheap.
talking about the timing, is that's the thing that I think you've kind of driven home to us is, even though you get the permit, it's not like, bam, we're done. These things can get tied up. I thought Bald Head got tied up for years.
it was one of the first ones. So initially there was a lot of litigation that was associated with the permitting of the terminal groins, and it stretched it out for years and years and years. Now that there's been a couple places, there's always still the risk of that, but I don't think it's as high because there's some examples of what has been through. I think if you were the first one, Figure 8 looked at it, they were way ahead of everybody else, and they were threatened with litigation, and they kind of pumped the brakes, said, okay, we're not going to go at this alone, we're going to wait for somebody else to catch up. And then their north end went into a more favorable inlet configuration, and they didn't have to worry about it. So, but I think now that we're through the permitting and construction of multiple terminal groins, I think the risk of litigation is lower than what it was if you were the first beach to go through it and do it.
Fingers crossed, right?
Rick,
What's the current construction estimates for terminal groin?
I think what you're looking at is somewhere on the order of 7 million for the structure. Don't hold me to that one.
Manager Darian, what'd you say?
Well, so
He
a
said
lot,
7 million.
I haven't heard anything from 30 million down.
I think that was Rick, actually.
right. So understand that a lot of times when they talk about the cost of the terminal structure, they also are including the cost of the beach renourishment to fill the fillet. So if you're doing it in conjunction with a beach renourishment project, the cost of the beach renourishment is over here. And so when I say 7 million, I'm talking about just the
Just
rock,
the groin.
just the rocks, not the augmentation and everything else that goes along with it.
And it's
Well,
important, I'm sorry,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, when you do it, the nourishment that's associated with is very important. Filling the fillet is an extremely important part of the process. One, because for construction of the groin itself, you're doing it in the dry. So you build the sand beach out in front, and then as they drive in the sheet pile and place the rocks, they're doing that in dry land. They can dig out, the 3 or 4 feet on either side of the pile to armor it, or the sheet pile wall to armor it. So the construction in dry, where you don't have to build a temporary bridge that goes out in the ocean, you're keeping the equipment with easier access to the site. That's an extremely important part. And then backfilling the fillet takes away the equilibrium of the beach immediately. So you're automatically at the condition that you want to see the beach in, so the natural processes just continue from there. So that's all I was going to say, is the beach nourishment is important.
And fortunately and unfortunately, that's not an issue that we're gonna have to deal with today, because we know it's gonna be sometime down the road before that can happen. But we do have an immediate issue that we're dealing with, and that's to get our engineered beaches in phases 1, 2, and 3, which is where we're looking at all the permitting and everything that's happening now, trying to get to that point. And so I guess my question is, looking at it from we've looked at it from a time situation. Let's look at it from a money situation. What are we going to need to do? What are we going to, what's going to have to happen for us to get from where we are to being ready in October of '26 to be able to go to work? I mean, what have you got to do, and where are we in, and I know this is not in our bailiwick, this is the Board of Aldermen, but I mean, are we gonna need more money now to move to the next step? I mean, are we gonna have to go back to the board for more conversation about monies? I mean, I'm not on the board, so you know more about that.
My understanding is the county is willing to put up, I'm kidding. I think the answer is.
He choked to death, man.
No, we talked about this some time ago. We don't know how much anything's gonna cost. We also don't know what the matches are gonna be. So you can't take something to the board until we know what the numbers are. What the board has done is, one, we approved obviously the permitting money.
Correct.
Okay, 2 is, we're putting money aside to do these projects. And so if we have money in the budget, we have cash available that we've been putting away for capital projects and for the beach projects, knowing those things. We've got one more payment of, $2 million to make, and then phase 5 would be done, paying off phase 5. And that's $3 or $4 million a year. If you're asking me, do I know if we're gonna have to finance part of this? I don't know, because I don't know what the match is gonna be. If the town's gotta put up $2 million, we don't have to worry about it. If the town's gonna put up $50 million, we've got a completely different story.
Well, I guess my
And so
question.
the answer is, what the town's doing right now is looking at the fiscal dollars, knowing that the money's gonna have to go on the beach. The board is aware of the 30-year plan that Chris talked about, but a lot of it's gonna be like, he was talking about the shallow draft. Okay, and I don't know do you have any idea what 1, 2, and 3 is gonna cost? $20 million?
No, we're probably gonna be, I would say is a safe number right now, 40 million.
Right, so you're looking at 10
Close
million.
to 20.
So you're looking at, no, but you would be looking at, if we could do the 3-to-1 match, you're talking about 10 million
Yeah.
from the town.
Yeah.
What we talked about in Chris's initial thing is we're not going to raise taxes to do this. Might we have to do a special obligation bond temporarily because we've got money going into it? Might. But I think that the board's pretty committed to getting it done. But again, if the bids come in and they're $100 million, then we have to say, okay, we've only got X amount, so we're only, because remember, once the permits are in, okay, we can move forward with the projects but it depends how much money we have. And the only commitment I can make is, who knows even what the board's gonna be, because there's an election this year.
Well, that's right.
But right now, we are fiscally putting money away, okay? Is that fair, Alice? We're putting money away for beach projects, no different than we are for capital projects.
Well,
And if you remember, I was a pain in the butt in this a couple of years ago, because I said, we have to get out of the mode that we can borrow money for everything we wanna do. We gotta, like you budget at your house, we gotta put money away, we gotta have down payments on this kind of stuff. I feel confident that we can get these things done with the funds that we've got.
Good. Yeah, all right, then back it up to a smaller, shorter period of time. Where are we in regards to the money that was approved for Chris to be able to go forward to the point that we are today? And are we
That's already
gonna?
approved. The $600,000 was approved already.
We still have plenty of budget. We do not.
Okay.
We do
And
not have
that
any.
was my question.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
hold up on that.
That was my question. I didn't know if we needed to be making some kind of a motion to be able to go back to the board, to be able to go to the next level where you guys are going.
No, we have sufficient budget.
Right.
out of that
Okay.
600.
Right, and if you remember, because I raised the issue because of the BISAC stuff, is, we talked about it last time, we're in fiscal year, so it's a June 30 fiscal year. And what the concern was that we had after coming here, as I presented it, was, if we tell Chris he's got until this June, okay, let's say we said the number was gonna be about $600,000 to do the permitting. If what you do is you say, oh, I'm gonna put it in this year, okay, of X, but he runs out, then you got a whole other problem. So what we did is, we went ahead and put in the current fiscal year, not the one that starts in July, to make sure that the permitting
Okay.
did not stop, because it went between 2 fiscal years.
Okay.
Okay, because it would be stupid to do that and then have to come back in a month later to say, he stopped in the middle of June because he ran out of money.
There you go.
So we
And
did
that was my
the
question.
allocation, yeah, we did the allocation so that the
We
process
can,
did not
there's
stop.
nothing to stop them from moving forward to getting the permit done,
Not to my
so,
knowledge.
as far as money's concerned.
You still got money, right?
Yeah, we still got money. We have $280-some thousand left in the budget, and I don't see us having any issue.
Can you float me a little?
Well, I hope not. It's 13 days. You better not spend it in 13 days.
No. It's going to go into FY26.
Depends on where you're going, boss.
No, but that was, the whole point was not, this fiscal year stuff is
Okay.
weird, because if it's not in the budget, then you
Yeah.
gotta do all this other stuff. It was like, we just decided last year, let's just allocate it all, okay?
So I just wanted to make sure that
No,
we
it's a
didn't
good
have,
point.
we didn't have any reason to go back
Nope.
to the board
Nope.
to get to the next step.
I think we're all set.
Hey, well, that's
It's a
great.
good question.
Well, I mean, I worry about
Every
money.
once in a while.
But I'm sure you got it stashed somewhere. We can always borrow it from you until we get to that point, you know, so.
It's just the VIG is 28%. I can find money for us at 28%, Larry. I can find money for
Anybody
you.
got any further questions or concerns about? You did a great job, by the way.
Thank you, John.
I mean, I think you were very detailed, and I think that it, you know, and I think we have a better understanding of the terminal growing, and you know, whether, regardless, and I think that the most important thing that you talked about is that, and especially those of you in phase one, is that even if we don't get to the terminal growing, we're gonna get it to be an engineered beach, and we're gonna
Gotcha.
keep it maintained. We're gonna try to keep it maintained to that level, short of a major hurricane coming to it. That,
Hey,
well, I know, boss, but, you know, so I think that,
we didn't put that in the budget.
but we're still making progress. We're still moving forward, and we're a little bit behind. We're a little bit behind where we hoped we'd be at this point in time, but that's life, you know. Everything gets turned
Yeah,
around.
and then just one other thing for us before we leave, since we're a beach committee, 2 things. We did get 4 done. We've started on the other one. For the people that did, when I went up and looked at Marina Way, if you remember, and Alice talked about it before, to rebuild those dunes. I don't know if you went up to Marina Way before they put that sand in, you could literally walk straight out into the beach. There was nothing there. So those are kind of projects that 3 or 4 years ago, we didn't have the money to do. Because people forget, every one of these projects is a reimbursement project, which means you gotta front this money. With the exception of 4, because they sent us a check in advance, which was interesting. But in terms of those projects, and also, and I don't think we put it in the minutes, Fran updated the schedule that got me in all the hot water, because everybody was arguing all the money went up to 1, and everything was done up in 1 and nowhere else. He put the schedule together as to where all the money has been spent, what's been done, over that period of time, and I think it's updated to include the four stuff now, right? And everything that the town has done during that period of time, and so, I mean, having been involved in it, we've moved a long way to make sure that we're taking care of the beaches and understanding that the asset we have as a town is the beaches, so.
Well, and I think we've made a lot of progress in the last 3.5 years.
Absolutely.
4 years, whatever we are. I've lost track of time now, but it's, it's come a long way, and we were pushing to try to get to the one stop so that we could move on to the next position, and that's happened now. So we know where we're going, and it's just a matter of getting that stuff done and getting permitting done so we can move on to the next level. So I think we're at a good place right now. So I think it's just a matter of Chris and Jamie getting busy, man. Let's do something,
And then just one final comment, since Tim's sitting here. At their budget presentation yesterday, the county is actually going to put some money on some of their beach access places and stuff too. But I guess the time before is when I actually spoke up, when it wasn't my turn, is talking about what a great place Onslow is and the great beaches. And I said, yeah, North Thompson, I think that did. Because I think you gave me the stink eye on that one when David was making the presentation. But I think that there's a realization by the county how important the town is and the beach to the county too. And so we really appreciate your support, Tim.
All right, are there any other questions or comments on this section?
Well, I've got a couple of questions and comments, and I don't know whether it needs to come from this side of the table or from that side of the table. But, and on this same subject and kind of veering off of it just a little bit, actual beach access to the beach. And I've stood up there in the board meetings more than once complaining about lack of access, particularly on the north end. Is there, buried in the fine print of some of these projects and money grants and what have you, that dictate or recommend how often there should be a regulated or public access to the beach?
Not in our meeting, not in this committee. That's more a board and alderman issue, because we're primarily what we've talked about.
Right, but still with the reconstruction of dunes and what have you, for monies available, grants, matching funds, whatever, is there some things that would help us with this project, but also get the folks that are on the marsh side of Island Drive, Inlet Drive, a way to get over to the beach that we're rebuilding?
So as far as legal stipulations for that, at the state, county, and local level, there are no stipulations as far as, it does have to be accessible. It has for state monies to come in, but it does not have to be, there's
no space.
There's no every quarter mile. So at the federal level, if you're getting financing or help on a federal 50-year project, there has to be an access every half mile, and it has to have X number of parking spots per access that are publicly available. That's a federal rule in the cost benefit analysis. But at the state level, there's nothing in there particular. I agree with you that access is a great thing, and certainly if you're looking at some of the, if you're looking at some sort of an NGO grant, they may want to see it more public, but that'll be case by case.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Your point's well taken. I just don't know that we can do anything with it.
No, but he's raised it at the board meeting. It's something we just have to take a look at.
and it's and like I say, it's not for this, right now. But like I say, but the town the town and the population is growing and the needs and the infrastructure is behind and needs to be caught up. And if there, I'm just saying, you know, if there was an opportunity
Yeah, I understand. I
through
agree.
this to help incorporate it and roll things along, then you've got something you can stand up and say, you know, here it is. And from the county standpoint, folks on that side of the bridge that are building and moving and all this over there, they want to know, well, I want to go to the beach. How am I going to get there?
Where's my access?
That's it.
Well, if we
And
can
I'm
get-
sure they get hammered. I'm sure they're getting hammered about it also.
If the county gives us enough money, we'll build some.
We're gonna do some work on the existing
Tim's
ones.
like, we just passed the budget. We only answered yesterday.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on. Is there any new business? Anybody got any new business to bring up? He just did. So he was right on key.
Right on schedule.
You were right on
He's
schedule.
trying to move you along, Larry.
Yeah, I can see. I need moving. All right, any more public comments, sir? Did you want to have something else to say now that we've gotten to this point?
Good meeting to come to, big pivot today on the thing. Off my comment, but just to answer a question, the biggest problem you have on the access is probably that most of the land is now private. You don't own the land to create the crossovers, unfortunately. Yeah, that's what your problem is. So I was here when you guys did, not you guys, but when we did the alignment of the channel. And I saw what happened with the realignment. And the beach committee at the time did the best they could. The board did the best they could. And the engineers did the best they could. And it was not a good project. And the sand disappeared within a year. And not only did it disappear within a year, it became worse than it was before. And I'm not trying to be a negative here. I think it's just, you know, these issues have to be talked about a little bit. I feel that you guys have won the lottery. You guys have won the sand lottery. Chris found this golden pot of sand for you. Not only was it a lot of sand, but it was convenient sand. This whole project is based on that sand. So one of the concerns I have is that the idea of, well, let's just take our lottery winnings and throw it on the beach because we have these lottery winnings, and we'll deal with the fact that it's going to flow away once it flows away. And I mean, I think this temporary holding deal is really important. And I think the idea of taking this great winnings that you have of this convenient sand that has to be used at one time because the project has to be done at one time to be affordable, I'm questioning a little bit that we're trudging ahead instead of saying, let's see how we can use this sand the best way. And if it does take one more year, you know, I know that's a big no-no for many people, but I don't think you're going to get that pot of sand again in another 5 years or another 10 years. And I guess that's just I just want that to be understood. I'm not trying to be negative, but I just think that this is an opportunity for the town to get these beaches right. And we got to do it the right way.
You gonna say something, Chris?
Can I respond to that, sir?
Certainly.
I will tell you, one of the things that I think TI Coastal as a group that we bring to this, we work up and down the coast from Corpus Christi to Cape Cod. We have seen, I've worked on hundreds of beach projects, probably 2 to 3 times more than most coastal engineers see in a lifetime. We are looking at the big picture. I want you to be assured of that. We're looking at what we need to do right now, and we're also looking at what is the best thing for the town long-term. And I think if you look at our other projects, whether it's Figure 8 Island or Topsail Beach or any of the other work that we've done in this area, there is a long-term plan and a long-term commitment. It's hard at the beginning of this because when you're in that triage environment where you've got houses that are right on the edge of falling in, what do you do? And you're right, you have to be very careful not to, do an amputation.
This was
because
not
of
a negative on you. In fact, I think you guys said you're going back to find out what you can do.
Yeah.
I think what my point was, us trudging ahead without you finding out,
Yeah.
okay, this is what's going to help us maintain it, and nobody's made a vote today, obviously. But the idea of, hey, the priority right now needs to be, what's the alternative here? Not that we got this sand, let's just go ahead and use it.
I understand. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, and I think we try, and I know from the board standpoint, we trust Chris on this thing. My biggest concern in this whole thing is not the growing or anything else, is I want to get the engineered beach in before we have another storm. Because if we don't and it's gone, we have to pay to put all that sand back on the beach. Because right now 4 is done, which is why, as Terry knows, I was very nervous about not getting all of it done. I actually asked the question, if we get 90% done, I asked him, is it still an engineered beach? And he said the 90% is. Because the protection we have to get that in place for us is huge in terms of the money that it would cost us if we have to put that back in. And the other thing to remind everybody on is, this is not a one-shot type of thing that I think, Terry, we've been talking about this for a long time. The problem is, they do a survey every year of the beach, right? And if you don't put the sand back, if it's an engineered beach and something happens and we lose 5 feet, right? It's based upon what that survey was, not what we originally put in. So if you don't keep it topped off, is that right? If you don't keep it topped off, you only get back what was there. So that's why the commitment, I know, at least from the people on the board now, is we understand that money's got to go in the beach literally every year. Now, that doesn't mean there's a beach project every year, but it means the funds have to go in there so we can maintain those and get the projects done. And it'll depend on whether shallow draft is available, what federal funds and things like that. And you make a very good point. If 6 months from now we know we're going to get $5 million more from the state, we might want to wait 6 months to get $5 million more from the state. So that's the balance. But I know that as we're looking for this, I think right now the commitment right now, a solid commitment, and Larry, you've heard this in the meetings too, is we know we got to sustain these beaches, we got to get it built, and once we get this thing engineered, and thank you for pushing that forward, and the leadership that Alice had on this to get that FOR money for us is huge in terms of what we're done. So,
Yeah, and we've certainly, you've got a point. There's no doubt about that. The problem is just like they're both saying over here, is that we've got to get our goal, and we discussed this as far as this committee is concerned when we started, was that our goal was to get all 5 phases to be engineered beaches so that we had FEMA to back us up. And I think that we were fortunate to be able to find this disposal site to be able to finish, because we've truck hauled all this other stuff that was an inordinate amount of money. And so which phase 4 and 5 were done. And so if we can get this done, then if our maintenance program is done the way we intend for it to be done, then we're going to be looking at using a lot less sand, but doing it on a consistent basis, not a one-time shot like we're doing now. So I think that now Mother Nature can make that all go away. But we've got to make it, so I think we don't see ourselves as having, well, maybe we want to just do part of it. I think we've got to get it all done, and we all believe that, and I think that, and then we can deal from there, because then if hurricanes come and different things happen, we do have some backup with money from FEMA that we don't have now. But anyway, thank you for your comments, and thank you for coming. You got a lot of good things.
Yep.
One more quick question. Chris, When you do the survey, do you do it the same time every year, or how does that work? So that going into, this
Before hurricane
hurricane
season.
season, that we have a baseline?
Correct. So we roughly do it about this time of year, every year. We try to do it right at the beginning of hurricane season. And that is because prior to hurricanes, in this June, July, August, the beach is actually accretional. So what it means is that we can go directly off of the survey that we have, that we don't have to do any, like, if we did it in March, we would have to make some sort of analysis for deductions of erosion caused by northeasterlies and all that. So we do it right here at the beginning of season so that it's directly related to a storm event if we have losses.
Good question.
All right, our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, July the 15th, as needed, and we'll see where we are. I mean, we're not gonna have a meeting just for the sake of meeting. We got a major, this was a great meeting, and I think that we know we're marching ahead, so there may not be a need for that meeting, but right now I'm putting it on the calendar, and we'll
July
just,
15th?
yeah, and then we'll just, I'll change it in plenty of time if in fact we don't do it. Do I have a motion that we adjourn?
Motion.
Motion, second?
Second?
All in favor?
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
We're-